This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
I got a DM from Adam Levy maybe about a month ago, and he asked would I be interested in playing on this video that he uploaded, I think yesterday or the day before, where basically the idea was, of course, getting a bunch of guitar players to play over the same track, the sort of thing that you've seen on YouTube before. Now, I've never participated in one of these before, but I have played improvised solos every single day for the last however many years it is, a long time. So I felt like I could give some kind of tips on this in this video, hopefully, and some ideas that you might want to try if you're interested in getting better at improvisation. Adam Levy does actually have a TrueFire course, and I think today is the day that you can get the Eric Johnson TrueFire course and in the Jam, so it's masterclass and in the Jam on TrueFire as part of All Access Pass. If you use the code JNC100, you get $100 off their All Access Pass for a year, or you can use the code JNC40 to get 40% off any courses on there. Anyway, so the number one thing to this is to kind of stop judging your improvisation so harshly. So I used to be really down on my playing in a lot of circumstances, and particularly if I improvised a solo on a gig. I guess this still happens from time to time, but I sort of really notice if I've made like a little bit of a slip up, or maybe something didn't sound super cool, and I'd kind of be really down on myself for maybe the rest of the song, or maybe, you know, potentially even the rest of the gig. Now, the important thing with this sort of stuff is that that has like a knock-on effect. So not only does it affect whatever you were playing in that moment, it can also affect what happens after that moment. So my best piece of advice for this really is to try and reserve some of that kind of negative thinking and some of that judgment from your playing, and more focus on just enjoying the moment. So for me, improvisation and improvising on guitar now is purely about kind of trying to enjoy the moment, trying to enjoy playing guitar. I'm not so much these days focused on little imperfections too much, and if they happen, okay, that's fine. I might just do another take, or I might just leave it as it is. The idea for me these days is that I want improvisation to be like a fair and true reflection of what I actually sound and play like as a guitarist. Part of that in my mind is that I wouldn't want to get in a room with someone and they see me playing and they're like, well, this is totally different to what you're playing is portrayed as in your videos, or totally different to how I thought you'd play, like you're not the player I thought you were. Hopefully it's like a pretty fair reflection. You get the idea that that's how I play. I'm not trying to hide anything, that sort of thing. So enjoy the moment and don't focus too much on tiny mistakes, especially in the moment of improvising. Another thing that I hear people talk about a lot is the idea that once you stick a camera on, you get like that red light syndrome thing where you just have to go out and get a hooker. No, where you're kind of in your own head and thinking, I think this is some of that same kind of negative thinking. Or as well, there might also be some truth to the fact that your perception of your improvising might be a bit inflated above what it really is, and putting the camera on and then watching it back, you actually start to see things that maybe you don't notice in the moment. I think it's a really good idea to record some of your practice, and at least if you are used to the idea of sticking a camera on and recording occasionally, then you hopefully diminish the kind of impact of this red light syndrome, whatever you want to call it. But the only thing really that makes you better at improvising and feeling comfortable doing it is doing more of it. At the end of this video, I'm going to put my very first take over this backing track. All that I knew was that it was in B flat when Adam sent it, because it's in the title. I thought, I'm not going to listen to the track beforehand. I'm just going to see what I can pick out with my ears and see what happens for a first take. I then did like 6 more takes, and I sent him take 7. He didn't specify how long he wanted me to go, so I just sent him what you saw at the start, and I think he clipped like the very end part of it. And that's actually fairly probably something you should bear in mind, that most of the time when you're seeing other people play, you're, especially like on social media, on Instagram and stuff like that, you're seeing like the best of a longer session. So it might be that they did several takes. It might be that there was a much longer window of time that they were playing for, and then they snipped out the very best bits. So you're not necessarily getting a fair reflection of necessarily what everyone sounds like. So if you're feeling kind of negative about your own playing, kind of keep that in mind, that sometimes, you know, as players and as people that put out stuff, you're kind of maybe snipping things down. It's not anything nefarious or you know, whatever. It's just something for you to be aware of, so that you don't compare yourself to something which is different to what you're doing, if that makes sense. And then another thing is that some of the kind of real high points, so for instance, players like Eric Johnson and some of these, John Petrucci, some of these players like that, where you hear a solo, sometimes these are bits and pieces, and you can hear them talking about this stuff, where you sort of record a bar at a time, this sort of thing. Maybe there was a moment of improvisation here, but basically these solos, although they appear on a record and in the experience of listening to them to be this one flowing piece, actually how guitarists arrive at that is different to what it sounds like, right? So you might record 8 bars, then you kind of do some more takes and you think, right, well, where could this lead? It's actually more of a composed process in many cases. So actually finding examples of truly improvised solos might be more difficult than you think. Now, one tip that I would give you in terms of getting better at this is to have an idea that you're going to start your solo with, so that you start to anchor your thinking and like the brain part to your playing part. So you might have some idea about how you want to start the solo. So I might have something like a little bit of a, just some little motif, and I'm going to try and repeat that through a solo. This idea of motifs and repetition, I think, is a really strong set of tools to have in the improvisation toolkit. It's not really, I don't think, always about, you know, particularly targeting chord tones or anything like that. I think a real key to some great improvisers is that they are able to make it sound like most things are intentional. And one real key way to do that is to repeat ideas and, you know, to manipulate ideas around that. So think about a rhythm maybe that you're starting with, think about the shape of a phrase, and think about, this is another really good idea, I think, if you think about like A, B, A form, A, B, A, where A and A are the same thing. So 1, 2, 3. So I repeat the same thing twice. And then B, step away from that. And then A. Particularly for melodic playing, I think that can be a really good strategy. And in terms of writing riffs as well, you hear it a lot in kind of Dream Theater chuggy riffs, where you play the same thing twice. So it might be a bar, another bar, and then you have something different, and then you restate. It's kind of bedrock of lots of stuff. So you could do that as an idea. And that doesn't need to be something that you think about super hard, right? Another thing that really made quite a big difference to me is because I'm quite an, like, not necessarily an anxious person, but someone who was anticipating the beat a lot, and I think I still do, but that's something I've been aware of. And so I started to really try and listen to like the drums and snare drum, and maybe actively place notes on beat 1, so that I'm kind of anchoring myself back to the backing track instead of my timing being all over the place, so that I can at least, you know, try and come back there, because I think timing is, again, if your timing is on point, everything else sounds a little bit more intentional versus it sounding completely random. And I think another thing to help these general concepts, if you're able to sing along, or try at least, then there is a chance that you're going to play something a little bit more melodic, because obviously if I'm able to vocalize it, the chances are it's more of a line that might be likely to be sung. There's an argument about whether or not you're leading the dance or being led, so sometimes I feel like my voice is waiting until I've heard the note to actually play it, but the actual goal of trying to play and sing at the same time still influences the playing enough to make it a worthwhile pursuit, I think. So that's kind of like, none of that is really even theoretical, right? So there is a bunch of theory that can help and support your improvisation, but there's a bunch of stuff that can be super feel-led, and I think some of the best improvisers are feel-led and maybe ear-led and aren't necessarily thinking loads over each and every chord, which you know, sometimes I think we can think that there's more thinking going on under the hood than there actually is. But those are just some little ideas that I have. So really listen to the drums to try and be in time with what's happening. Listen to the backing. Play over these things repeatedly. That's the thing that Pat Metheny has said, that he'd play sometimes standards for like a whole day, and you know, people would go out and they come back, and this is like a jazz thing in general, that people would come back and they were still practicing the same set of changes. Getting really comfortable so that the changes are kind of just within your head, if you're thinking about changes in that way, or you're not even having to think about them, they're just falling out. The structure of phrasing, so you're thinking like, well, I'm going to repeat this phrase, maybe I'm going to repeat this phrase an octave up, but really keeping a strong handle on, this is the statement, I'm going to restate it, I'm going elsewhere and I'm going to be able to restate it. Not something you're going to do all the time, but doing a little bit of this in your solos can go a long, long way. I think hopefully that helps a little bit. That's kind of some of the stuff that I'm trying to be conscious of when I'm playing and improvising. I don't know if that's at all helpful. Let me know if you've got other ideas for videos on this kind of topic. But Adam was gracious enough to ask me to get involved, so I wanted to kind of give a little bit of what's going on under the hood. Of course, ear training and doing this sort of stuff lots and learning lots of chord changes mean that I'm able to identify what's going on in that track without ever having seen it or heard it. But the more I hear it, the more I know, well, this is going to here, there, this is going to here, there. So even, first time round, I don't necessarily catch everything. But as you do this more, you start to recognise, well, yeah, that's what's happening. A lot of rambling. I've got to go and sell a car. Cheers.